We have not been able to confirm. We're getting some conflicting information on it, but we are hearing that he is participating in those 2 programs.
What if one of the world's most powerful music icons lived a double life?
And welcome back here at 2 Live now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Some breaking news to report to you out of New York City. Live picture there over New York Harbor, you can see there.
Fueled by drugs, coercion, and fear. Diddy's federal sex crimes trial exposes a disturbing world behind the fame.
That Diddy is enrolled in a domestic violence and a drug treatment program, 2 separate ones.
The verdict could change everything. Don't miss what the jury just heard.
And the second reason is that he's going to be sentenced. And one of the things judges look at is, is this person rehabilitated or trying to rehabilitate themselves?
The courtroom was silent as the jury prepared to hear the final instructions. All eyes were on one man, Sean Diddy Combs, a global music mogul now at the center of one of the most serious criminal trials in the entertainment world.
Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District, also Trump himself. Whether or not they're going to weigh in on that news.
Facing federal charges that include racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution, Diddy's high-powered lifestyle has taken a sharp turn toward possible life imprisonment. The prosecution painted a dark picture, claiming that behind Diddy's celebrity persona was a criminal enterprise built on abuse, intimidation, and the exploitation of women. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic told the jury that sex trafficking was at the heart of this case. She explained that even if some freak-offs or hotel nights appeared consensual, just one proven incident involving force, fraud, or coercion would be enough to convict. That's all the law requires. According to the indictment, women like Cassie and Jane were pulled into a cycle of manipulation, given drugs, promised luxury, then used in disturbing sexual acts. Prosecutors alleged that drugs like MDMA, cocaine, and GHB were handed out by Diddy's inner circle to lower resistance. They also claimed that Jane was once so high, she vomited between escorts during a so-called freak-off. In one of the strongest accusations, the prosecution pointed to a violent hotel night in 2024, where Jane was allegedly beaten, dragged, and then forced to perform sexual acts. Clear indicators, they argued, of sex trafficking. There were also financial trails, flights paid for by Diddy, expensive escorts flown across states, and text messages organizing everything. The government claims these are not isolated acts, but proof of a larger pattern, a criminal network designed to serve Diddy's desires. As the jury prepares to deliberate, the world watches closely. Is this a case of a powerful man abusing his influence, or has the government misunderstood a wild but consensual lifestyle? That decision now rests in the hands of 12 jurors. Prosecution reveals dark pattern. The prosecution didn't hold back. In closing arguments, Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic laid out a disturbing pattern, one that painted Sean Diddy Combs not just as a celebrity with extreme tastes, but as the mastermind of a criminal operation fueled by sex, drugs, and control. At the center of it all, the government says, was a calculated system of abuse masked as luxury. Slavic told the jury, "You don't need to believe every hotel night was sex trafficking. You just need to find one." That single sentence framed their entire case. She admitted that women like Cassie and Jane may have agreed to some of the freak-offs early on, but the prosecution argued those moments of consent were drowned out by what came next: coercion, addiction, and fear. Slavic detailed how Diddy's inner circle worked like a machine. Drugs were delivered MDMA in water bottles, Xanax, ketamine. Women were dressed, filmed, and manipulated. In one example, Jane tried to participate in a hotel night without drugs. She ended up vomiting between 2 escorts. On another occasion, she was allegedly beaten by Diddy and then forced to continue with the sexual encounter. These weren't isolated mistakes, the prosecution said. They were steps in a system. Jane's rent was paid off by Diddy. Her bills were covered. But those payments came with unspoken strings. She was expected to keep participating, even when she said no. In one of the most powerful parts of the closing, Slavic cited video evidence. Though the courtroom couldn't see it, the jury did. Videos that showed Jane seemingly enthusiastic. But the prosecution argued she had been drugged, possibly squirted with liquid Molly. They pointed to text messages, voice notes, and even expert testimony from a forensic psychologist who explained how victims often don't leave right away because they cling to the good moments and feel trapped in toxic loyalty. From drug distribution and forced sex to intimidation with sex tapes and violent threats, the prosecution called it what they believe it was: a criminal enterprise. And Slavic closed by saying, "You don't have to find force every time, just once. That's enough." Now, it's up to the jury to decide, was this a man living a wild life or a predator operating in plain sight? Defense claims it was all consent. As the prosecution painted a picture of a dark and abusive empire, the defense fired back, arguing this was not a federal crime, but a messy, complicated life of adult choices. Lid defense attorney Mark Agnifilo called the case a tale of two trials. One based on evidence, videos, and messages. The other, he said, was built on exaggeration and emotional storytelling. Agnifilo's core message to the jury was clear: consent was always present. He pointed out that Cassie and Jane both stayed in relationships with Diddy for years. They took trips, shared loving texts, and even planned sexual encounters. If this was sex trafficking, he asked, why were they still in touch? Why didn't they leave immediately? He challenged the prosecution's theory head on. If the first 75 freak-offs were consensual, how does number 76 suddenly become a federal crime? That moment hit hard. It forced the jury to question the line between poor judgment and illegal behavior. The defense didn't deny Diddy's controversial lifestyle, threesomes, wild parties, drug use, fantasy sex games, but they insisted these were acts between consenting adults. According to Agnifilo, this was about swinging, not sex trafficking, about jealousy and heartbreak, not force or fraud. He also reminded the jury that Diddy wasn't hiding anything. His relationships were public, his actions recorded, and the women were free to walk away, and eventually did. He noted that Jane's rent is still paid by Diddy, and he even helped her financially during custody disputes. Would a predator do that? The defense attacked the racketeering charge too. Agnifilo pointed out that no co-conspirators were charged, and no one testified that a criminal enterprise existed. Diddy's security had guns, but they were licensed professionals. His assistants were just doing their jobs, not running a sex ring. They even used Cassie's own words against her. After a CNN video went viral, she posted that her experience was about domestic violence, not sex trafficking. That detail became a cornerstone of the defense's argument that this trial was mischaracterizing toxic relationships as federal crimes. In the end, Agnifilo said what Diddy did might have been immoral, but it wasn't illegal. He's not perfect, he admitted, but he's not guilty. The courtroom was left with a question: are we judging a criminal, or just a flawed man in a wild world? Jury must decide a monster or misjudged. After weeks of graphic testimony, emotional witness accounts, and explosive closing arguments, the fate of Sean Diddy Combs now lies in the hands of the jury. 12 ordinary citizens are tasked with an extraordinary decision: is Diddy a criminal mastermind, or just a flawed celebrity? The prosecution argued he led a criminal enterprise, using his fame and fortune to manipulate, drug, and control women. They pointed to texts, flight records, sexual videos, and bruised victims, claiming it was all part of a system designed for one man's pleasure, backed by threats, intimidation, and silence. The defense pushed back hard, calling the case exaggerated and emotional. They insisted this was about adult choices, not crime. They said Diddy's accusers stayed in relationships, traveled by choice, and were never held against their will. Not perfect, but not guilty, they argued. But now, none of that matters. What matters is what the jury believes. Was there consent or coercion? Were these women victims of abuse or willing participants in a lavish, chaotic lifestyle? One thing is certain: this case is bigger than just one man. It's about power, fame, accountability, and the very definition of consent in an age of blurred lines. As the jury enters deliberation, the world watches. Will they convict a legend or clear his name?